dark as I just started. You gotta try this. Cotton candy. It says powder on it. Josie, why are you covering up the... Just try it, dude. No, fine. Okay. That's pretty good. What is it? Oh, warheads. Didn't know they made that. It's pretty good. I know, right? It is pretty good. I'll let you go back. Right, thank you for interrupting the start. Sorry about that. Greetings. I am Gresham's at arm, and welcome back to Gresham Reads Monster Blood Tattoo, Book 1, Foundling, by D.M. Cornish. So in the previous chapter, Rossamünd had found himself locked away within the cellar of, well, I say cellar, but the hold of the ship that Poundinch had placed him in. And there he had spoken to a interesting creature known as a... what was it? Glamgorn. A Glamgorn known by the name of Freckles, as well as seeing a creature known as a Revenant, or Reverman, as Freckles called it, which is apparently an artificially created monster brought back to life, made from via various human body parts, which is fairly disturbing, but I suppose it makes sense that some sort of dark trade like that would exist. But again, still disturbing. But either way, as they spoke, Freckles the Glamgorn seemed to hint at something about Rossamünd. Now, my theory, and Darkus' theory as well, is that Rossamünd is part monster himself. But we're not entirely sure. Perhaps his mother had been, quote-unquote, attacked by a monster. Or either that, or offered herself up to one, or his father. Could have been his father, for all we know. It's honestly quite difficult to say, but either way, our running theory is that he is part monster. But either way, I am a bit late in starting this because of issues throughout the day. So let's get right into it. So as usual, it will begin with a definition. This one is the definition for Glamgorn. So, a Glamgorn, noun, one of the smaller kinds of monsters, a true boggle. They come in all manners of shapes, pigmentation, and hairiness. Big eyes, little eyes, big ears, little ears, big body, little limbs, little body, big limbs, and all the variations in between. Often feisty and jittery, certain kinds can get downright nasty, the worst of them being known as blightlings. One of the bizarre idiosyncrasies of Glamgorns is that they like to wear clothes. Everyman clothes stolen from washing lines and unguarded trunks. There are rumors that, just like this, Glamgorns, and worse yet, blightlings, have been able to sneak into cities of Everyman to spy and cause mischief. That would imply that the monsters have a more central intelligence of sorts. Let's see. Let me see what the next chapter is. Ooh. This one's going to be quite a lengthy video. I might actually cut into Darkus's stream time. Either way, let us begin with Chapter 15, Decisions. The cord that once tied his wrists now cut, Rossamünd was forced to walk before Captain Poundage, his fear of that large pistola the only leash. Mighty thunderclouds boiled in the west and cast high vesting in an early gloom. It was clear that Poundage thought the hour was already dim enough to move his captive. Why else would he have returned to get me so soon? Rossamünd reasoned. One consolation was the fresher air, happy relief from the cloying, rotten fumes of the hold. As he was forced down the gangplank, Rossamünd sucked in several headache-clearing breaths through his nose to cleanse it of the stink. There was hardly another soul about as they went along the piers. Most of those they did pass by paid them no attention. The few who did saw Poundage and quickly stopped looking. Generally, the vessels berthed in this region of the docks were in bad repair, similar to the state of the Hogshead when Rossamünd had first gone aboard, way back in Boschenberg. There was a strong sense that the authorities did not visit this part of the harbor very often. Consequently, Rossamünd had first gone aboard. Rossamünd guessed that they were likely to be captained and crewed by the likes of the Hogshead's master, and were not places to flee to for help. Between the stone and the sty again, it would have poor lonely Freckle too. Sorry, I had something in my throat. The Foundling walked on with his hands pushed hard into the pockets of his fine frock coat. It occurred to him once more to use his knife. Poundage had still not taken it from him. Rossamünd could not fathom why. Perhaps he figured that the pistola, his great size and greater experience, would all be deterrents enough. They were, and Rossamünd let the idea go in despair. "So you met me cargo, then?" Captain Poundage's rough voice intruded on the boy's calculations. Rossamünd grunted once and nodded. "You see, whether you knew not afore or not." Poundage went on, playing it as if it were just an amiable conversation between friends. "Now, as you do, he knows it all, I expect, or nears enough. And with that being so, I can't afford to have you out of my sight. Don't worry, mind. Life aboard the Cockerel will be a mite more interesting than work as a lamplighter." "I don't think so," Rossamünd muttered between gritted teeth. He felt cornered and cheated. "Come, lad, that's no way to be." Poundage sounded genuinely hurt. "I'd be sparing you all the walking back and forth, twiddling with the lamps as day goes out and comes back in again, on and on. Who'd want that?" "I would." Rossamünd had been raised to serve on a ram, but not this way, and most definitely not with a master like Poundage. "What? And waste all that wonderful learning you got from your society?" The captain clicked his tongue disapprovingly and shook his head. "Turn left ear, Rosie boy." Rossamünd was getting angrier and angrier. The injustice of his own situation, and even that of Freckle, gnawed at him. "I don't want this. I have been letting other people tell me where to go, what to be." His thoughts fumed. "I will not let this beggar force me to do anything more." With that, he sat down right in the middle of the wharf. Poundage almost walked right over the top of him. "What's this here?" he cursed. Giving a low growl like that of a crotchety dog, the captain said, "Thick and heavy, "Get up." Rossamünd did not stir. He refused to be forced against his will any longer. Master Franz taught, he knew, with a certainty, would not have let himself be cowed in such a way. What is more, there are some people at the far end of the dock way that looked as if they might actually come to his aid. Get up, Poundage seethed quietly, stepping over to the Foundling menacingly. This little tantrum won't do you any good, mucky little snot. Captain leaned low, and Rossamünd heard the pistola being rattled near his ear as a threat. Stand, Frassat, or I'll make you one of me cargo instead of me crew. The boy's mind hummed now with a thoughtless energy, poised at the debut of valiant effort. First leaning forward, then pushing up with a hefty vigor, Rossamünd stood. His crown and the back of his head collided sharply with the first chin. With first the chin, and then the already crooked nose of Poundage, sending sparks through the Foundling's vision. The brute captain belched a stunned curse of the filthiest language and toppled clatteringly to the wooden planks of the wharf. Rossamünd did not wait to see what would happen next. He just ran. Chancing one rapid glance behind him as he fled, he saw the evidence of his work. Poundage sprawled on the deck way, fumbling between his deadly flintlock and the blood sputtering from his nostrils. Rossamünd dashed on, bounding over and skipping around all obstacles, on towards where he had spied those better-seeming people. They were no longer there. Regardless, he raced on, the sound of scuffling behind, and then a steady pound told him that Poundage was on his feet again and after him. The chase was in earnest now. With a stumbling skid, Rossamünd darted right, up a connecting siding. He quickly saw that he had made a wrong turn. Without hesitation, he retreated. Poundage loomed, blood smeared over his mouth and chin. Too close, too close. Get here, he shouted, but failed to close quickly enough on the nimble boy. Rossamünd scrambled on with a panicked yelp as the captain stumbled, his hands gripping at vacated air. With Poundage so near now, Rossamünd expected to hear the terrible clapping report of the pistola and be sent to his doom with an oversized ball foiling his proofing and piercing his spine. He ducked his head without thinking, trying to make his legs move faster. He caught sight of the clock in the square, always to his left, half hidden by all those masts. Though he was moving too quickly to be able to read its time, it gave him his bearings as he sprinted to the next connecting siding. Before him, two figures stepped out, two looming shadows. Rossamünd did not know whether to plead to them for help or to avoid them as best he could. Stop him! The thief stole me coin bag! Bellowed the quicker-witted Poundage. That deciding it for the Foundling, well aware that most people prefer the assertions of a grown man to the excuses of a child, Rossamünd skipped desperately past one of the shadows, who seemed to ignore him, stepping past with a flash of deep magenta cloth, and nimbly into the grasping arms of the second. Let me go! Let me go! Rossamünd hollered. He's a liar! He's a liar! Let me go! Rossamünd! The stranger's rebuke finally penetrated. Rossamünd! I know he's a liar. It's me, 4 Acres! In an instant, the Foundling's whirling mind was stunned to a halt. There was the postman, his normally grinning mouth tight with consternation, his tricorn knocked onto the wharf by the power of Rossamünd's struggle. Utterly confused, Rossamünd looked back in the direction of Poundage, who called to 4 Acres. Well caught, good sir! You has done me a service! Yet between the cruel intentions of the captain and his victim stepped the deep magenta shadow. It was Europe. They've come. Both of them. On came Captain Poundage, clearly thinking the chase concluded in his favor, his boots pounding on the wood. Thought you could rob a fellow of his rightful prize, did ye? He gloated with a smugly grim sneer as he hurried to claim back Rossamünd as his slave once more. Without a word and without hesitation, the Fulgar stepped into the path of the captain. He towered over her, yet she calmly reached out her hand. Zuck! There was the briefest flash of green fire as she sent the suddenly amazed Poundage, despite all his forward momentum, hurtling backwards into the oaken side of a sailing ship. He hit it hard, the wind driven from his lungs with a belching cough. His eyes fixed in shock, he dropped through the gap between the hull of the boat and the planks of the wharf. There was a muffled splash, and that was all. Her expression masterfully serene, Europe walked back to 4 Acres and the now elated Foundling. Taking Rossamünd by the hand, she continued back along the wharf. "Come, let us find this Mr. Germanicus," she said quietly. As they led him out of the docks, Rosamund's heart was a song of freedom. They saved me. They saved me. She saved me. While they went, he answered all their questions, giving an excited account of who Poundage was, of why the Rivermaster had been chasing him, of what had been intended for him. Then he thought of Freckle. Poor Freckle. More friendly and genuine than most people the Foundling had ever met. His glee at his own liberation entirely evaporated. Perhaps Miss Europe is still in a rescuing frame of mind. He stopped and said, "Miss Europe, Mr. 4 Acres, I have a friend back on the Hogshead who needs saving." Europe let go of his hand and folded her arms, pressing her chin against her chest. She looked at him shrewdly. "Really?" was all she said. "Aye, Miss Europe, I can't be free and him not," Rossamünd implored. "I can show us the way. I remember it. It isn't far. The boat's most surely still deserted. It was when I was there, and that was but a few minutes ago." 4 Acres pursed his ample lips. "You're asking a lot of us, Rossamünd." The Foundling swallowed. "And what of this Germanicus fellow?" The quizzed Lazar with a deepening frown. "Is not your need to see him urgent?" "But my friend helped me," Rossamünd cried. "We've got to get him free." "You make friends too easily, little man," Europe murmured. 4 Acres sighed. "But when in straits, you prove your mates," he mused. "I, for one, will help you. Miss Europe must shift for herself. Lead on. Let's get this done before this brute swims his way clear." Rossamünd did not entirely follow what 4 Acres was saying, but understood his meaning. Grateful, he started his way back along the way he had ran, looking back at Europe. She had not moved. "Miss Europe?" With a long What the hell? Water went down the wrong way. With a long, suffering look, the Lazar rolled her eyes. "All right, little man. I'm coming, she said, and her mouthed a sour complaint as she followed. She showed no inclination to hurry, despite the possibility of Poundage's emerging once more from the vinegar waters. The Fulgar lagged as they hurried back to the Hogshead. Getting tetchy when Rossamünd made a single false turn. Yet he found the rotten, sinking Cromster easily enough. Nobody was apparent on deck. With cunning grace, 4 Acres crept aboard to check the hold below. Watching him from a berth, Rossamünd could well see how the postman had survived the dangers of his employment. Europe sat on a bollard, crossed her legs, and made as if where she was just where she meant to be. The postman quickly reappeared and quietly declared the Hogshead uncrewed. "She's a bit of a stinker," he added, and a sinker too by all evidence. Rossamünd hesitated for just a moment, overcoming his revulsion of this vessel and all the unhappy things that had happened to him aboard her. Covering her nose with her handkerchief as she came aboard, Europe refused to go near the hold. "You were on here for how long?" she marveled. 4 acres went below again and called, "Which cage, Rossamünd?" The Foundling went to the hatch and pointed to the prison that held Freckle, then to the third box crate. "But watch out for that other one over there. It's got a rever in it." The postman rapidly took a step away from the dangerous crate. "You got a what?" he barked. "I can see why you didn't much like being on this bucket." Several times he turned a nervous eye towards it as he crouched down and tinkered with the lock of Freckles' own cage. Rossamünd had no desire to go down into the hold while the reverman remained, and stayed at the top of the ladder. It was only then that it dawned on Rossamünd that Europe, or even 4 acres, might not appreciate rescuing a Glamgorn, a monster. He almost panicked. What will Miss Europe do? Yet whatever might happen, he would rather chance that than knowingly leave Freckle in the certain misery of his current condition. Though Rossamünd did not see how he had done it, 4 acres released the lock, saying, There you are, friend Rossamünd. Time to be moving on." As he swung open the top of the crate, it was slammed the rest of the way as Freckles suddenly sprung from the top of his prison, wailing delightedly, "Free! Free! Free! Poor Freckles had enough!" At the same moment, the rever in the third box crate shook it mightily and started up a retching wailing. "Let us out! Let us out! We want to eat him! Let us out!" Not even Miss Europe, when she had fought the Grinlings, moved as quickly as 4 acres at these simultaneous eruptions from the box crates. In a single step, the postman both spun about and sprang away, his tomahawk swinging ready in hand. Quicker than the eye, the Glamgorn leapt right over 4 acres and shot up the ladder. All that Rossamünd saw was the small brown thing, all legs and arms, and those alien yellow eyes. These eyes caught Rossamünd's own as Freckle dashed past, an extremely brief yet strangely meaningful contact, before the Glamgorn sprang off the deck and disappeared into the murky liquid of the Groom. Wide-eyed with shock, "Oh," was all Rossamünd could think to say. 4 acres blinked up at him in equal surprise, and came quickly away from the rantings of the rever. "There you be, your friend is free. Let's leave this wild broken fella to his raging." At the commotion, Europe had approached. "Rossamünd," she purred with icy malice. "Was that your friend?" The Foundling turned to her, and seeing her cold expression, looked at his feet. I... She gave him a look of mild contempt. "You made me come down here to rescue a boggle." "The curious was right," she growled quietly. "You really are a wretched little Sidorner." "Look here," 4 acres declared, reaching the top of the ladder. "There's no need to be spitting such filthy words." Rossamünd's eyes narrowed obstinately, and he scowled at the Fulgar. "And Francetot is right. You're the worst monster of all. You just go around killing no matter what. That poor shrew did nothing to you." Of all the indignant, Europe took a step toward him. This time, he was not daunted. This time, he was not going to just be meek. This time, he would defend himself like a man should. 4 acres moved as if to intervene. Europe became still. She looked from the boy to the man, her expression twisting weirdly. She dropped her head and began to make low, unnerving noise in her throat. Rossamünd glanced at Fouracres, who shrugged. The Foundling took a step toward her and started as she threw her head back at last, and let out a gush of laughter. Great guffaws shook her, mighty, mirthful sobs. Rossamünd froze in bewilderment. Mr. Rope? The Lazar sank to her knees and laughed and laughed and laughed. Shaking his head, going to her side, Rossamünd crouched down and tried to peer into her face. He looked to the postman again. Shaking his head, Fouracres was just as bewildered. Finally, Europe's violent glee ebbed. Panting, still chuckling, she looked at the Foundling from the corner of her eye. "Ah, little man," she wheezed softly. "You're about the strangest, bravest little fellow I've ever met." Taking off her quartz glasses and dabbing tears, the Lazar got back to her feet. She perched her glasses back on her nose, put on warm doeskins against the increasing cold, and offered Rossamünd her hand, saying, "Now, let's find this Mr. Germanicus." Rossamünd looked at the hand. He did not know what to think of her. Besides which, what was he to think of Freckle, who had fled with no farewells? This world is too hard, he concluded. Gripping the Lazar's fingers gingerly, he descended the gangplank off the hogshead and wished never to see that vessel or smell it again. Behind them, they could hear the muffled shrieking of the river, still trapped in its tiny prison. As they walked back through the moored vessels, Fouracres explained to him their own side of his original liberation. It had taken Europe longer than the prescribed half-hour to settle up payments that were her due from her clients. By the time she had emerged from the pink building, Fouracres was already concerned whether Rossamünd was just being irresponsible or if something was wrong. Without even waiting to set the landlord someplace safe, Europe was after you, Fouracres stated, matter-of-factly. Had to catch it up, and we simply walked all over the docks, asking for any sights of you, turning up nothing for the longest time. Then some fellow with a Westerner's accent and the blackest fingernails I'd ever seen suggested we might try looking again in the direction where we found you. Took a few souls to wheedle even this from him. I said souls, not sauce. We had already been searching an hour or more, and had been over several parts of the deck twice. We were in the act of following that fellow's advice when I spied you running your heart out, looking as if all the other worsts of liquor were at your tail. Having crossed and recrossed that particular place several times, we simply made sure we took a way that would cut you off. And whoever was scaring you, he added grimly, the rest you are there to witness. Rossamünd could almost not believe that these two had striven so hard to find him, that Europe had led the way in his liberation. How was he to feel about her now? If she was this loyal, he would happily serve as her factotum, but then she hates monsters so bitterly. Oh, I don't know. Rossamünd was beginning to find his lack of gumption extremely frustrating. It was Europe who settled the question as they drove on in the landlet. "Something is not quite right inside of me, little man," she declared. "I felt it when I sent that odious bully into the harbor for a bath. And it's got a lot to do with why I let your boggled chum go. The spasm those nights ago have done more harm than I cared for. I need to see my surgeon very soon." "Are you really ill?" Rossamünd asked. Europe smiled gravely. "I'm not dying, but I must set out on the soonest vessel for Sinister." She paused for a moment. The Foundling watched her intently. Europe returned his stare. "This is my aim," she continued finally. "You go to Winstermill and serve there faithfully, as you have me. as the lamplighter you intended to be. I will go to Sinister to get repaired. I have no idea how long that might take, but when I am back to my healthy self, I will come by your way, little man, and see how you're doing. Rosamund's mind boggled at the thought of what to get repaired actually involved. He knew better than to ask, though. She bent down and filled his senses with her sweet perfume. Perhaps then you might consider again the opportunity to become my helper. He just smiled and nodded. He liked this, and was glad it was Europe who had formulated such a plan. It gave him his task to do right now, and offered him time to think further on the opportunities a factotum's life might offer, rather than a lamplighter's career. The offices of the chief harbor governor were not, a little surprisingly, near the port, but in the administrative center of High Vesting. The low marble-white building was so much like all the others in this district that Rossamünd was glad he had 4 acres with him, for he was sure he would never have been able to find it on his own. Within, they discovered that Mr. Germanicus had left a dungeon 3 days before. However, he had left instructions of his own referring to the appearance of one lazy marine society boy. The instructions were characteristically simple. He was to make his way to Winster Mill forthwith, where he was expected. With 4 acres there to smooth the way and vouch for Rossamünd whenever it was needed, the clerks and sergeants of the harbor governor were industrious in their help. They ratified the remains of his existing travel certificates and identification papers. Sorry, I don't know why I said peppers. Maybe I'm craving something spicy. Writing up new travel documents, they even wrote a covering letter explaining, they said, the unusual state of Rosamund's papers. What a relief it was for him. He had expected a lot of hard questions and suspicious innuendo. He was now at liberty to make his way to Winster Mill. To avoid any possibility of reprisal by Poundage or his crew, and in keeping with Master Germanicus's instructions, it was determined that Rossamünd should leave the very next day. They drove to a fancy hostelry known as the Foxhole. Europe preferred it as her place of repose whenever she was in High Vesting. Before its facade of grand marble columns, with Europe organizing the footmen in the distribution of her luggage, 4 acres bid Rossamünd farewell. Now, I reckon I might just get the courts to bring some of the burden interest to bear on the cockerel and her nefarious captain. That's the name of her, ain't it? Aye, Mr. 4 acres, Rossamünd nodded. It was the cockerel, all right. And the hogshead, too. He sincerely hoped that such a burdensome interest might bring the dastardly career of Captain Poundage to a necessary end. The Foundling stepped closer to 4 acres and whispered, "And what of the Glamgorn we saved? It was a shame he had to run off so fast. Will he be all right?" "It's the way of those little fellas," said 4 acres, with a fatherly pat to the Foundling's head. "Deep in unfriendly places, you can hardly blame the buggle for skipping away quick. As to how he'll fare, I can't say I rightly know, though I can sure tell you those little fellows are wily and tough. Trust it to Providence, Mr. Rossamünd. It's all you can do." Rosamund's burden lightened just a little. He sighed. 4 acres stood and smiled sadly down at him. "I will keep my eye out for you, Mr. Rossamünd. I have reason to go to Winster Mill every now and then. So to thee, I will say for now, till next occasion. Don't trust everybody you meet, though I reckon she might be more honorable than she seems." He indicated the imperious Fulgar with a subtle look. Seeing this, Europe approached them. "Goodbye, Postman 4 acres. Thank you for your help." She gave a very slight, almost curtsy-like bow, and tried to hand something to him, a bill of folded money. Foraker's bowed deeply, but did not take what was offered. As I said when we were hunting for Rossamünd, I have no need for reward. To serve such a fair face and in such friendly company is a reward in itself. Thank you, but no. With a wry look, the rope retracted her offering and entered the hostelry. Off I go now, Rossamünd, to my own abode. Stay safe. The postman and the Foundling shook manly hands. Interesting phrasing, but okay. Finally, Rossamünd had made a friend, and now they were to part. He began to feel as if he would never settle down, never have loved ones close by to call his own. I hope you can come and see me soon, Mr. Forakers. I reckon a friendly face will be really welcome where I'm going. I hope I find some more. Surely you will. Surely you will. The postman answered softly. The timing of such things is near often perfect. Take care. With Rossamünd watching mournfully, Forakers walked away with a wave into the gathering dark. And that calls it for this. Sorry, I needed a good stretch. So, if you all enjoyed that chapter, feel free to leave a like and a comment down below with your thoughts and opinions on it, as well as the story as a whole. And also make sure to share this video around. If it's not to your taste, perhaps you might know someone who would enjoy listening along. And also make sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell to be alerted whenever a new video goes live. In the meantime, I will see you all in the next chapter. And I am Gresham's at arm, and I do hope you have a pleasant day.